My name is Tuapoy. I am 3 years old then, but I have vivid memories of Peter and Linda's wedding.
Akala ko'y di pa handang muling dumibo.
What I remember most was jumping and romping in their pristine matrimonial bed. After the wedding, I would learn that it was to ensure that the firstborn would be a boy. I also remember that I got violently sick after drinking endless bottles of soft drinks. I threw up everything that I had eaten, staining Linda's shimmering satin wedding gown. Practically the entire Chinese community was present. During their first year of marriage, Linda often brought me to their house in Bahada. She and Peter would pick me up after nursery school from our store in their car. Linda, I called her Achi, and Peter Ahia. They were a happy couple. I would see them chase each other among the furniture and into the rooms. There was much laughter in the house. It was this happy image that played in my mind about Peter and Linda for a long time. I was 6 years old when I sensed that something had gone wrong with their marriage. Linda left the Bahade house and moved into the upstairs portion of the Nanking Store, which was right across from Father's grocery store in Santa Ana. The Bahada residence was the wedding gift of Peter's parents to the couple. It was therefore strange that Linda would choose to live in Santa Ana while Peter would stay in Bahada, a distance of some 3 kilometers. In Santa Ana, where the Chinese stores were concentrated, the buildings used to be uniformly 2 stories high. The first floor was the store, the second floor was the residence. In some time, Chinese grew prosperous and moved out to establish little enclaves in different parts of the city and in the suburbs, while we remain in Santa Ana. One late afternoon after school, I caught Linda at home talking with Mother. I noticed that Linda's eyes were sad, not the eyes that I remembered. Her eyes used to be full of light and laughter. Now her eyes were somber, even when her voice sounded casual and happy. I was bored. That was how she explained why she had moved to Santa Ana. I wanted to know if she could not do that by going to the store in the morning and returning home to Bahada at night like Peter did. I wish Mother would ask the question, but she did not. However, at the new Canton barber shop, I learned the real reason. One night, Mother told me to fetch Father because it was past 8 o'clock and he hadn't had his dinner. The new Canton barber shop served as the recreation center of our block. At night, the sidewalk was brightly lighted, serving as the extension of the barber shop's waiting room. People congregated there to play Chinese chess, to read the Orient News, or just talk. It was a very informal place. Father and other elderly males would go there in shorts and sandal shirts.
Boy! Boy!
Yes, Mother.
Can you fetch your father so that we can eat our dinner?
Okay, Mother.
My father in red shirts was playing chess when I got there.
Pa, Mama said we should go and eat.
Tell Mother I follow in a short while. Go home. I said go home. This is how children behave now. You tell them to do something and they won't obey. Check. Hokoma, I turn around and you kick me? Hokoma, you defeated me 4 times in a row. No, 7 times. What? You cheat me, you know that. Certainly 5 times. No more. Let's play another game. You beat me in chess, but I have 6 children, all boys. Can you beat that? See this? This is my youngest. Can you beat this? Man, I have 7 children. 4 children, not counted. Akong.
His laughter was so loud. Akong lived several blocks away. He had 10 children, all daughters, and his wife was pregnant again. They laughed at their communal joke, but the laughter slowly died until there was absolute silence. It was a very curious thing. Father saw Peter coming around the corner and he suddenly stopped laughing. The toothless man turned, saw Peter, and he stopped laughing too. Anybody who saw Peter became instantly quiet, so that by the time he was near the barber shop, the group was absolutely silent. It was Peter who broke the silence by greeting Father. He also greeted some people and suddenly they were alive again.
You've grown a lot.
I shyly smiled at him. He exchanged a few words with Father and then ruffling my hair once more. It struck me that he was not the Peter I knew, vigorous and alert. This Peter looked tired and his shoulders are sagged. I followed him with my eyes. Down the road, I went inside the store. It was one of those nights when he would sleep in the store.
Bad stuff. Apple has no goals, but Peter is a bad stuff. After 4 years? And no sons? Not even a daughter?
I think it's the moment. She had a regular receptor inside the moment.
It's sad. Very sad. Her parents want to jump her, but he loves her.
When Father and I got home, I went to my first brother's room.
Brother, why do they say that Akong has no bones?
What? Where did you learn that?
At the barber shop.
Don't listen in when adult talks. It's bad manners.
Well, what does it mean?
It means Akong cannot produce a son.
And what is a bad stuff?
It means you cannot produce any children. It's like a seed. It won't grow. Why do you ask?
They say Peter is a bad stuff.
Well, that's what's going to happen to him if he won't produce a child. But it's not really Peter's problem. It's Linda's problem. She had an appendectomy when she was still single. It could have affected her, brother said. Somehow, I felt responsible for their having no children. I worried that I could be the cause. I hope nobody remembered that I jumped on their matrimonial bed to give them good luck. I failed to give them a son. I failed to give them even a daughter. But nobody really blamed me for it. Everybody agreed that it was Linda's problem. That is why Linda had moved into Santa Ana. But the problem was more complicated than this. First brother explained it all to me patiently. Peter's father was the sole survivor of the Zin family. He had a brother but died when still young. The family name was therefore in danger of dying out. It was the worst thing that could happen to a Chinese family, for the bloodline to vanish from the world. Who would pay respect to the ancestors? It was unthinkable. Peter was the family's only hope to carry on the family's name, and he still remained childless. But while everybody agreed that it was Linda's fault, some people also doubted Peter's virility. At the New Canton barbershop, it was the subject of drunken bantering. He was aware that people were talking behind his back. From a very gregarious man, he became withdrawn and no longer socialized. Instead, he put his energies into Nanking Store. His father had retired and had given him full authority. Under his management, Nanking Store expanded, eating up 2 adjacent doors. It was rumored he had bought a large chunk of Santa Ana and was diversifying into manufacturing and mining. Once I met him in the street and I smiled at him, but he did not return my greeting. He didn't ruffle my hair. He had become a very different man. His mouth was set very hard. He looked like he was angry at something. The changes in Linda occurred over a period of time. At first, she seemed to be in equal command with Peter in the Nanking Store. She had her own desk and sometimes acted as a cashier. Later, she began to serve customers directly, as if she were one of the sales girls. Then, her personal maid was fired. Gossip blamed this on Peter's parents. She lived pretty much like the three stays in sales girls and the young mestizo driver who cooked their own meals and washed their own clothes. Members of the community whose opinions mattered began to sympathize with her because her in-laws were becoming hostile towards her publicly. The mother-in-law made it known to everybody she was unhappy with her. She began to scold Linda in public. That worthless barren woman, she would spit out. Linda became a very jittery person. One time, she served tea to her mother-in-law, and the cup slid off the saucer. It gave the mother-in-law a perfect excuse to slap Linda in the face in public. Peter did not help her when it was a matter between his parents and herself. I think at the time, he still loved Linda, but he always deferred to the wishes of his parents. When it was that he stopped loving her, I would not know, but he had learned to go to night spots, and the talk began that he was dating a Visayan bar girl. First brother saw this woman and had nothing but contempt for her. It seemed that Peter did not even try to hide his affair, because he would occasionally bring the girl to a very expensive restaurant in Matina. Matina was somewhat far from Santa Ana, but the rich and mobile young generation Chinese no longer confined themselves to Santa Ana. Many of them saw Peter with a woman, as if to lend credits to the rumor. The occasional night visits he made at Nanking Store stopped. I would not see his car parked there at night again. One day, Peter brought first brother to a house in a subdivision in Mandug, where he proudly showed him a baby. It was now an open secret that he kept his woman there and visited her frequently. First brother told me about it, after swearing me to secrecy, the way Peter had sworn him to secrecy. Well, that settles the question. Peter is no bad stack after all. It had been Linda all along, my first brother said. It turned out that Peter showed his baby to several other people and made him swear to keep it a secret. In no time at all, everybody in the community knew he had finally produced a son. People talked about the scandal and whispers, a son by a Visayan woman, and a bad woman at that, but they no longer joke about his being a bad stack. All in all, people were happy for Peter. Once again, his prestige rose. Peter basked in this renewed respect. He regained his old self. He now walked with his shoulders straight and looked openly into people's eyes. He also began to socialize at New Canton Barbershop, and whenever we met, he would ruffle my hair. As for his parents, they acted as if nothing had happened. Perhaps they knew about the scandal but pretended not to know. They were caught in a dilemma. On one hand, it should make them happy that Peter finally produced a son. On the other hand, they did not relish the idea of having a half-breed for a grandson. The old generation Chinese being conscious of racial purity. What was certain though was that they remained unkind to Linda. So there came a time when nobody was paying any attention anymore to Linda, not even Peter. Our neighbors began to accept her fate. It was natural for her to get scolded by her mother-in-law in public. It was natural that she should stay with the salesgirl and the driver. She no longer visited with mother. She rarely went out, and when she did, she wore a scarf over her head, as if she were ashamed for people to see her. Once in the street, I greeted her. She looked at me with panic in her eyes, mumbled something, drew her scarf down to cover her face, and hurriedly walked away. First brother had told me once that Linda's degradation was rather a strange case. She was an educated girl, and although her family was not rich, it was not poor either. Why she allowed herself to be treated that way was something that baffled people. She was not that submissive before. Once, I was witness to how she stood her ground. Her mother-in-law had ordered her to remove a relic from a living room of their Bahada house, saying it was a bad feng shui. With great courtesy, Linda refused, saying it was beautiful, but the mother-in-law won in the end. She nagged Peter about it, and Peter removed the relic. When the Visayan woman gave Peter a second son, it no longer created a stir in the community. What created a minor stir was that late one night when the new Canton barbershop was about to close, and there were only few people left, Peter dropped by with his eldest son, whom he carried piggyback. First brother was there. He said everybody pretended the boy did not exist. Then Peter died in a car accident in the Buhangin Diversion Road. He was returning from Mandug, and the truck rammed his car, killing him instantly. I cried when I heard about it, remembering how he had been good to me. At the wake, Linda took her place 2 rows behind her mother-in-law, who completely ignored her. People passed by her and expressed their condolences very quickly, as if they were afraid of being seen doing so by the mother-in-law. At the burial, Linda stood stoically throughout the ceremony, and when Peter was finally interred, she swooned. A few weeks after Peter's burial, we learned that Linda's mother-in-law wanted her out of Nanking Store. She offered Linda a tempting amount of money. People thought it was a vicious thing to do, but none could help her. It was a purely family affair. However, a month or 2 passed, and Linda was still in the Nanking Store. In fact, Linda was now taking over Peter's work. I was happy that she had begun to stir herself to life. It was ironic that she would do so only after her husband's death. But at the same time, we feared for her. Her mother-in-law's hostility was implacable. We waited keenly for the showdown that was coming. A flurry of emissaries went to Nanking Store, but Linda stood pat on her decision to stay. Then one morning, her mother-in-law herself came in her flashy Mercedes. According to them, this is what happened. Linda ran upstairs to avoid talking to her mother-in-law, but the older woman followed and started berating her and calling her names. Linda kept her composure. She did not even retaliate when the older woman slapped her. But when the mother-in-law grabbed Linda's hair, intending to drag her down the stairs, Linda kicked her in the shin. The old woman went wild and flayed at Linda. Linda at first fought back defensively, But as the older woman kept on, she finally slapped her mother-in-law hard in the face. The old woman retreated, shouting threats at her. While some conservative parties in the community did not approve of Linda's actions, many others cheered her secretly. They were sad, though, that the mother-in-law, otherwise a good woman, would become a cruel woman out of desperation to protect and perpetuate the family name. Meanwhile, Linda's transformation fascinated the entire community. She had removed her scarf and made herself visible in the community again. I was glad that every time I saw her, she was getting back to her old self. Indeed, it was only then that I noticed how beautiful she was. She had well-shaped lips that needed no lipstick. Her eyes sparkled. Color had returned to her cheeks, accentuating her fine complexion. Blooming, the woman said, seeming to thrive on the fight to remain in Nanking Store. The young men sit up whenever she passed by, but they would shake their heads and say, "What a pity, she is a barren." Then, without a warning, the in-laws suddenly moved to Manila, bringing with them the two bastard sons. They made it known to everybody that it was to show their contempt for Linda. It was said that the other woman received a handsome amount, so she would never disturb them again. We all thought that was that. For several months, an uneasy peace settled down in Nanking Store. As the struggle shifted to the courts, people pursued other interests. Then, to the utter horror of the community, they realized Linda was pregnant. Like most people, I thought at first that she was just getting fat, but every day it was getting obvious that her body was growing. She dropped by every store in our block and chatted with the store owners, as if to make sure that everybody knew she was pregnant. There was no other suspect for her condition but the driver. Nobody had ever paid him any attention before, and now they watched him closely. Unused to attention, the driver went on leave to visit his parents in Iligan City. One night, I arrived home to find Linda talking with mother. "How old are you now?" she asked. 12, I said. You're a man already. I should start calling you Napoleon, huh? Well, Napoleon, I've come here to say goodbye to your mother and to you too, she said. Then she smiled. It was the smile I remember when I was still very young, the smile of my childhood. "Tomorrow I'm going to Iligan to fetch Oliver," she said. "Then we'll proceed to Cebu City to visit my parents. Would you like to go with me?" she asked. I looked at my mother. She was teary-eyed. Linda stood up and ruffled my hair. She said, "So tall." That was 2 years ago. We have not heard from Linda again. Nanking Store remains closed. The store sign has streaked into pastel colors like a stale wedding cake. First Brothers says it is best for Linda to stay away. As for me, I am happy for her, but I keep wondering if she had given birth to a boy.
Akala ko'y di pa handang muling tumibok ang damdamin, ngunit bigla kang dumating sa buhay ko. Di kailangang umimik, nagdadagdalan lang sa tingin. Saan ka ba